Greetings to our global audience and thanks for tuning in to our special breaking news coverage. Listen, what we are watching unfold right now goes way beyond just forehands and backhands. This isn't just another stats sheet or a post-match breakdown. This is something much, much bigger. We are tracking a massive cultural explosion that has just rocked the tour down under. Tournament directors. They had absolutely no clue this was coming. Security is currently running around trying to put out fires, and the whole tennis world is just staring at Melbourne with their jaws on the floor. If you have scrolled through your social feeds in the last 24 hours, there is zero chance you missed it. The clips are everywhere, racking up millions of views and dominating the algorithm. The visuals are just pure insanity. We are talking about lines of people stretching for kilometers, winding all the way back from the gates of Melbourne Park. It looks less like a tennis match and more like a stadium concert for the biggest pop star on the planet. You can literally see the fear in the eyes of the event staff. They look frantic, completely out of their depth, and just barely holding on against what I can only call a tsunami of passionate fans. And who is at the center of this absolute hurricane? A 20-year-old phenom from the Philippines who just grabbed the entire tour by the collar and shook it awake. She has made it crystal clear today she isn't just a player filling out a draw sheet. She is a full-blown revolution on two legs. We are, of course, talking about the one and only Alexandra Eala. Yes, the breaking banners you are seeing on every sports channel are 100% real. While the pundits in the commentary booths are stunned, this moment was bound to happen eventually. But let's be honest, if you are Filipino or you have been paying attention to the rising tide of Asian tennis, you aren't surprised at all. You are probably sitting back with a smirk thinking, "We told you guys to get ready for this." Let me break down exactly what is happening with this developing story. Alexandra Eala, the pride of her nation, finally walked onto the court for her official main draw debut at the 2026 Australian Open. Now, usually when a player ranked outside the top 30 steps up for their opener, the schedulers stick them on the backcourts. You know, the quiet ones way out in the parking lot. The vibe is usually pretty chill, maybe a few hundred people clapping politely, a library atmosphere, just a standard sleepy afternoon in the sun. But that is definitely not what went down today. Instead, the place exploded. Organizers put Alex on court 6, a tiny intimate court meant for close-up viewing, definitely not designed for a blockbuster spectacle. That arena has barely any seats, and honestly putting this match there is going to go down in the history books as one of the biggest logistical failures we have ever seen at a Grand Slam. We are talking about thousands upon thousands of screaming fans flooding the Melbourne Park grounds, essentially taking over the entire precinct in a massive show of support. This is the mobilization of the Filipino diaspora on a level we haven't seen since the prime years of Manny Pacquiao. The energy is identical, it is intense, it is loud, and it is everywhere. But here is the difference. This electric atmosphere wasn't contained inside a boxing ring at the MGM Grand in Vegas. It was spilling over onto a hard court in the middle of the Australian summer. The viral footage shows what looks like an endless ocean of people. They weren't just sitting in the seats, they were absolutely everywhere, packing every single inch of available space. It was dangerous, honestly. People were literally hanging off the railings, balancing on ledges of nearby courts, climbing whatever they could just to get a decent line of sight. You had crowds pressing up against the chain-link fences 5, 6, maybe even 7 rows deep. They were crushing in just to see Eala hit a single ball, while the security guards stood there looking totally helpless. There is one clip specifically that is blowing up right now, the one we showed in the intro. It captures the chaotic aftermath perfectly, and you have to see it to believe it. It shows Eala trying to leave the court, but she doesn't look like a tennis player walking to the locker room for a shower. It looks like a scene from a spy movie. Seriously, it looks more like a head of state or a global pop icon being emergency evacuated from a riot. She is completely surrounded by a mob of people. A whole squad of security guards, must have been at least a dozen of them, had to link arms and form a human shield just to get her through safely. You can see the genuine panic on their faces. You can hear them screaming at people to move back, step back, but their voices are completely drowned out by this wall of noise, chanting, "Alex, Alex, Alex." Look, the passion, absolutely beautiful. But from a logistics perspective, a total nightmare. The marshals were like sandcastles trying to stop the tide. It got so bad that officials actually had to lock the gates to the court hours before the match even started. Nobody else could get in. But even with the lockout, the crowd outside just kept getting bigger. They gathered around the giant screens in the plaza, roaring at every single point. Some people are asking, why does this matter? Why are we spending so much time talking about a first-round match? Here is why, because this proves that the geopolitical balance of power in tennis is shifting right under our feet. For decades, this sport has been all about the polite, quiet traditions of Europe and the big corporate money of the United States. It's been very controlled. But what happened in Melbourne was raw, unfiltered, chaotic emotion. The Eala army has arrived. Even the GOAT Novak Djokovic stopped what he was doing to check out the noise. He publicly mentioned the insane atmosphere in his presser. And even top stars like Jessica Pegula saw the frenzy with her own eyes and couldn't believe it. The whole locker room basically froze. Players were crowding around the TV monitors asking, "Wait, who is on court 6? Is Rafa playing? Is it Roger coming back?" No, folks, it was Alex Eala. So, in today's broadcast, we are going to break this down from every angle. We will go frame by frame through the footage and talk about the actual tennis match against Alicia Parks. And what a match it was, a total emotional roller coaster. Eala served up a bakery product in the first set, winning 6-0 before the pressure of the moment started to get heavy. We are also going to look at the security failure, the story of the marshals who just could not hold the line no matter how hard they tried. Was it a safety hazard, or was it just pure, unadulterated love for a national hero? And the big question remains, is the tennis establishment actually ready for the Philippines? Because after the scenes we just witnessed, I don't think they have a choice anymore. So buckle up, everyone, because we are getting into it. We are diving deep into this mania to figure out how one young woman turned a random side court into the absolute center of the sporting universe today. But first, we need to set the stage properly. Without the context, that viral video is just a bunch of noise. You need to understand the setup. To really get why those marshals were sweating bullets, you have to understand the massive mistake the Australian Open Planning Committee made here. The Australian Open calls itself the Happy Slam and brags about its huge crowds, but let's be real. It runs on a very strict social hierarchy. You have Rod Laver Arena for the kings and queens, Margaret Court Arena for the princes, then the big show courts like John Cain. Kia Arena gets the fun matches. But Court 6 is basically a walkway. It's a parking lot court. It's a decent court, sure, but it's designed for people to walk times, pass times on their way to get a drink, not to stop and watch. And it sits right in a major bottleneck of the grounds. When the brackets for the tournament were first released, pairing Alex Eala against the heavy-hitting American powerhouse Alicia Parks, the scheduling committee likely took a quick look at the official rankings and figured it was just business as usual. On one side of the net, you have Parks, a genuinely dangerous threat with the skills to crack the top 100, and on the other, Eala, a rising meteor of a player at only 20 years old, hovering near the top 50 in the 2026 standings. To any traditional scheduler crunching the numbers and looking at the data, this matchup screamed standard opening round, a routine fixture that would likely wrap up quietly without much fuss or media attention. So, following standard procedure, they tucked the match away on court 6, expecting it to be a nice little filler for spectators, and grabbing a sandwich, but they completely dropped the ball on one massive game-changing factor: Philippines connection. What the tournament directors failed to grasp is that Melbourne is home to one of the most vibrant, deeply entrenched, and incredibly passionate Filipino communities you will find anywhere on the face of the earth. You have to understand that Filipino sports culture is a different beast entirely. They do not just watch a match and clap politely, they occupy the space, treating the support of their national heroes like a loud, proud, and solemn civic duty. This cultural intensity turns what should be a quiet tennis match into a roaring national event, and reports from the ground confirmed that massive lines had already started snaking around the block as early as 8 o'clock in the box morning. By 10 o'clock, a full 2 hours before a single ball was hit, the designated fan zone was not just full, it was bursting at the seams, with the court itself absolutely jammed to capacity. We are talking standing room only, with barely enough oxygen to go around, and this is exactly where the chaotic story involving the overwhelmed marshals and security teams really starts to get interesting. You see, standard tennis security protocols are designed for orderly single-file lines and well-behaved crowds who obediently take a step back when asked nicely by a guard in a yellow vest. But those rulebooks were never written to handle the sheer density of humanity that flooded the venue that day. Even after they bolted the gates, the crowd didn't disperse. They just compressed into an immovable solid block. Effectively, they built a human wall around the perimeter, resulting in that viral footage we have all seen of marshals frantically waving their arms, looking completely helpless against the tide. That clip captures the precise second where logistical control evaporated. Though it is crucial to point out that this wasn't a riot. Nobody was fighting or being aggressive. We need to make it crystal clear that the vibe was overwhelmingly joyful and electric feeling, much more like a street festival or a rock concert than a stuffy tennis match. However, if you look at it from an operational safety and logistics standpoint, the entire situation was an absolute logistical nightmare for the ground staff trying to keep a lid on things. The security teams were powerless to stop the surge because people at the back of the crush were pushing forward, desperate to get even a tiny, fragmented glimpse of the history happening on the court. Now let's break down what it was like inside that pressure cooker, because that wall of noise had a direct, tangible effect on the gameplay. Just put yourself in Alicia Parks' shoes for a second. Here you are, an American competitor who relies on a cannon of a serve and aggressive, heavy baseline shots to dominate the rhythm of the match. But the moment you step onto the concrete of Court 6, you are slapped in the face by a sonic boom that rivals a Davis Cup final played in hostile territory, even if there was no malice intended. The atmosphere was unapologetically pro-Eala to a staggering degree. Every single time Alex painted the lines for a winner, the explosion of noise was loud enough to pop your eardrums. On the flip side, whenever she missed a first serve in that opening set, a collective groan of heartbreak rolled through the stands, literally vibrating the metal foundations of the bleachers. This surge of electric energy strapped a rocket to Eala's back, propelling her to a level of play we rarely see from a debutante, as she came out swinging and feeding ravenously off that adrenaline spike. It honestly felt like the Eala army was out there, hitting the ball with her, helping her sweep the first set 6 games to love handing out a dreaded bagel in a Grand Slam debut against a big hitter like Parks. The reaction from the stands when that set point was won was pure pandemonium, with fans losing their minds and going absolutely berserk at the scoreboard. Security guards outside probably thought a full-scale riot had kicked off, because the thunderous roar spilled over into the neighboring arenas, actually disrupting matches happening 3 courts away. However, this kind of viral intensity is a double-edged sword. Riding that high requires a massive amount of emotional energy, which is physically and mentally draining for a young player to sustain. The fatigue started to show its face in the second set when the inevitable adrenaline crash hit, and Alicia Parks deserves a massive amount of credit for keeping her cool while under siege. Parks figured out that the screaming fans couldn't return her serves for her, so she started cranking up the velocity, effectively silencing the crowd by ending points before they could even start. As the momentum swung to the American, the mood in the stands shifted from pure euphoria to high anxiety, with the deafening cheers morphing into nervous, pleading shouts of encouragement. When Eala eventually dropped the match with a final score of 6-love, 3-6, 2-6, the heavy cloud of disappointment in the air was so thick you could almost cut it with a knife. Yet it was the scenes that played out after the final handshake that really grabbed the world's attention. Usually the loser on Court 6 just packs their bag, signs a ball or two, and disappears down the tunnel. That is definitely not what happened with Alex Eala, and the aftermath is the specific subject of that viral video that is currently trending on every single social media platform. The second the match ended, the crowd didn't leave. They surged forward, desperate to see her high-five her or snag a quick selfie with their national idol. The marshals had to scramble linking arms to form a physical human chain just to carve out a narrow, safe path for her to squeeze through the mass of bodies. Why were the security teams totally unable to hold the fans back? Because the sheer volume of love and adoration was a force of nature that was physically impossible to contain. If you watch the video, you can see Eala looking tiny in the frame, surrounded by towering security guards, looking a little bit shell-shocked herself by the sheer scale of the reception. During her press conference later that day, she admitted the whole experience was intense, saying, quote, "I did not expect that many people to show up for me," unquote. But the real seal of legitimacy on this spectacle wasn't just the fan turnout. It was the serious validation she got from the absolute elite legends of the sport. When you have a titan like Novak Djokovic, a man who has seen literally everything tennis has to offer, sitting in a presser specifically talking about Alex Eala, you have truly arrived on the world stage. Djokovic characterized the situation as a good problem to have, and coming from a legend of his stature, that specific phrasing carries a ton of weight. He is effectively sending a signal to the organizers. Look at this passion. You have a competitor here representing a nation of 110 million people who are absolutely obsessed with her. It begs the question, why are tournament officials hiding a massive draw like this on a tiny outer court like Court 6 when she clearly moves the needle? Even Jessica Pegula, a top-ranked American star, admitted she was watching the monitors and saw the lines wrapping around the stadium, remarking that the scene was absolutely crazy to witness. This level of recognition turns a fleeting viral video moment into a genuine career milestone, shocking the tennis world because the sport is usually such a predictable ecosystem. We usually know exactly who the marquee names are, but Eala has smashed that order, bringing with her a passionate, untapped demographic that the sport of tennis desperately needs to embrace if it wants to grow. Ladies and gentlemen, we are tracking a bona fide demographic tsunami right now, fueled by a young, digitally savvy, and ferociously dedicated Asian following. When we report that the globe was left with its jaw on the floor, we are talking about way more than just simple attendance figures. This marks a fundamental tectonic shift regarding where the actual pulse of tennis culture resides in 2026. We need to really drill down and unpack exactly why this massive transformation is gripping the sport at this precise moment. The big questions remain. Why were standard safety protocols totally overwhelmed? What drove thousands of fans to descend upon the venue like a tidal wave? You have to understand, for these fans, Alex is not just an athlete holding a racket. She represents a powerful living symbol of potential. Sharpened at the world-class Rafa Nadal Academy, she acts as a cultural bridge, effortlessly navigating between worlds with fluency in Spanish, English, and Tagalog. She is the living embodiment of the global Filipino success story. If you analyze the viral clips circulating online, focus on the raw emotion etched on the faces in the crowd. These are definitely not your typical strawberries and cream tennis purists. I would wager a good chunk of them could not explain the technical difference between a backhand slice and a drop shot. But that does not matter, because they did not show up for the tactics. They showed up for the visibility and representation. The reason the security detail failed to hold the perimeter is simple. You cannot police that specific magnitude of collective passion. When a community is bursting with that much national pride, it transforms into an unstoppable force of nature. Metal gates and physical barricades become totally irrelevant in that specific scenario. And let's be crystal clear about this. Nobody was jumping barriers to start a riot or hurt anyone. They surged forward with one singular goal: to brush against a piece of living history. However, this creates a massive logistical nightmare that tournament directors are going to be losing sleep over for a long time. Executives at the Australian Open, Roland Garros, and the US Open are officially on notice as of right now. You can no longer treat Alexandra Eala like just another name on the roster sheet. If her name appears anywhere on the draw, she demands a security entourage equivalent to what you would provide for the top 5 superstars on the planet. You absolutely have to schedule her matches on a main feature court. This decision is not about her current WTA ranking. It is about the crushing demand of the ticket-buying public. If the tournament planners had the foresight to put this match inside John Cain Arena, which is open to general admission pass holders, that stadium would have been stuffed to the absolute rafters. The atmosphere would have been absolutely electric, but more critically, the environment would have remained controlled and secure for everyone involved. Instead, they created a dangerous bottleneck on Court 6 that sparked the chaotic scenes trending all over social media today. So what is the next move from here? The footage has already gone worldwide. The entire sporting community is shaking its head in disbelief. Alexandra has packed her bags and left Melbourne, but make no mistake, she has left a massive crater in the tennis landscape. She has solidified her status as a legitimate box office attraction, but she also learned a brutal lesson about the crushing weight of public expectation. That security breach is basically the perfect metaphor for her career right now. She is constantly besieged by noise from every single angle. She is surrounded by a massive population that is starving to claim a little piece of her glory. The pressure is frankly suffocating. How is she supposed to breathe, let alone refine her technical game, when a simple opening round match feels like a National Independence Day celebration? The security staff had a hard enough time protecting her physical safety, but the real question we need to ask is, who is protecting her from the mental toll of all this? That viral video clip showing her exiting the arena, with her head down flanked by heavy guards, is incredibly heavy to watch. It captures a young woman who has ceased to be just a tennis player in the eyes of the world. She has become public property. She is a full-blown cultural icon, and we have to remind ourselves she is only 20 years old. To wrap up this deep dive, let's zoom out and look at the macro perspective. We titled this segment, "Whole World Shocked," for a very specific reason. For once, that headline is not just clickbait. The global tennis community was genuinely flabbergasted. They were completely taken aback by the sheer, unmanageable volume of support. They were floored by the intensity of the passion. They were blindsided by the logistical incompetence of organizers who failed to predict the absolute force of nature that is the Filipino fan base. We all watched the clips of security personnel desperately trying to hold back a veritable sea of humanity. We saw a young athlete being escorted off a tennis court like she was a pop star leaving a stadium concert. We witnessed a match that started with a Dream 6 love set and ended in a gut-wrenching defeat. However, I would argue that the final numbers on the scoreboard are the least significant part of this entire saga. The crucial takeaway here is that Alex Eala has arrived not just as a participant in the draw, but as a true main character. That unstoppable security incident is the defining image of her early career. It symbolizes that her support system is massive at times, totally overwhelming and absolutely impossible to hit the brakes on. To the planning committees of the French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open, get your pens out and take notes right now. Do not ever place Alexandra Eala on an outside court like Court 6 again. Do not underestimate the power of the Eala army. If you build it, they are going to show up. And if you build it too small, they will practically tear the fences down to get in. Not with malice or anger, but with sheer, unadulterated love and devotion. The good news is, Alex Eala is safe now. She is moving on to her next tournament destination. It looks like the WTA events in the Middle East are next, where guess what? There are hundreds of thousands of Filipinos residing in that region. The security teams in Abu Dhabi and Dubai better start their cardio training immediately because Eala Mania is not staying in Australia. This is officially a global phenomenon. We are going to continue tracking her progress every single step of the way. We will continue to advocate loudly for better scheduling of her matches, and we will be right here to break down the next viral moment, the second it happens. Thank you for tuning in to this extensive breakdown. If you were actually part of that massive crowd in Melbourne, hit up the comments section. What was the experience actually like on the ground? Was it as chaotic as the footage suggested? And for the rest of the world, are you truly ready for the Alex Eala era? I'm your host, signing off. Stay passionate, stay safe, and keep your eyes on the ball. Good night.